Hello, 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 and welcome back to another YouTube and Facebook Live
Hey,
with me. And I'm so excited to have Machel, the sex doc Hunt. We're so excited, so excited. So
I am
um,
too.
we'll give people a little bit of time to come on. Let me just turn
Yeah,
on my.
it's still early. People are just kind of trickling in from doing everything that they do.
Yes, and today's a full moon. So, I've had a lot of people
Absolutely.
say to me, they were stressed today, this full moon in Pisces, stressing
Oh
people
wow.
out. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a tough one.
it is. It really is. So, as people are coming on, say hello. Let us know that you're here. I see somebody's coming on already. Just say hello. I'm excited to have the relationship and sex doc on with me. I'm going to say, a lot of times I meet people through Instagram, and when I like their posts and things like that, I send them a message to come on and join me. So when I spoke to Michelle, he came on. I was like, "Ooh, I love his accent." I'm like, "Where are you from?" So y'all, I just want to hear him talk, and I'm just going to be quiet most of the time.
No, you're not. You're not going to
Hear
be
that
quiet at
British
all.
accent.
We need to hear everything you have to say.
All right, all right. So I see people come on. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Please say hello. Let us know you're here on this beautiful full moon in Pisces day. So, Machel, thank you so much for joining me.
You are
Um,
so
can you go
welcome.
ahead and introduce yourself and tell me who
Absolutely.
you are?
Absolutely. Thank you. So, first of all, let me just say thank you so much for having me on. Thank you for embracing Tantra in the way that you do and having such an amazing platform. I think it's absolutely incredible. So, my name's Machel Hunt. I am a psychosexual therapist and relationship counselor, and I specialize in all things sex and relationships. So, I treat couples and individuals that have concerns around sex, sexual appetite, sexual libido, sex drive, erectile difficulties, premature ejaculation, compulsive sexual disorders, fantasies, BDSM, or just generally not being able to communicate well with each other in a relationship. So that's usually how people get into seeing me. And then I also have a podcast where I talk about sex and relationships. It's called Let's Come Together with a Sex Doc. It's on Spotify. It's on Google Play, on Amazon, Apple, Anchor, wherever you get your podcasts, you can actually listen to me on there. And then I also do a lot of tantric coaching as well and sexual coaching. So, yeah, someone says they're a newbie.
Yes. And I love that. I love having newbies on because there's just so much to learn. And even though what is it? My realtor life is a newbie. I'm still always learning. So welcome, welcome. There's so much to always learn. And if you're new to my channel, I just want to say my goal, my mission is to really talk about sexuality and release the taboos because we have so many stigmas and taboos about sex,
Absolutely.
about relationships. And like you were saying, we need a space, someplace that we can talk about these things and let these things go. And so it's so funny because my show started, it kind of came about because I live in Brazil and I always travel to do workshops and things like that. And primarily in the US, I've done workshops in DC, New York, Atlanta. And people are always like, can you refer me to someone who can
Right.
do sessions in person? And I'm like, I don't know anyone. I don't know anyone because I didn't know anyone because I started this work in Brazil. And so most of my contacts, people that I knew were in Brazil. So then I made it a mission to start to meet people and connect with people. And it's
Right.
been great. So, and then I was like, it started in May when I was like, masturbation month. Let me just start bringing people out and come on and talk. And so that's how this really came about. And I've met some amazing people, and it's been good. We can have these contacts and people can have someone to go to in person if they want, I guess after COVID, right? Because everything is online now. So,
Right. Off the COVID.
But tell us, how did you start? Because I don't think most people are like, oh, I want to work with sexuality tantra when they're in high school and they're getting ready to go to college and decide what they're going to do
Well,
with their life.
actually, it was quite different for me because I've always been interested in the mind, and I've always been interested in how the mind connects with the body. And also, I used to be a stylist. I worked as a fashion stylist throughout my studies. So I was always interacting with people in a way that was very, very intimate. Seeing people naked, having them talk about how their experiences of their partners were. And it really got me into recognizing just how important sex was to individuals and to couples. And when I did my first degree in psychology, and I began to learn how great the mind is and how amazing we are as humans, I then realized that sex was an integral part of that. So I actually very early on knew I wanted to be a sex therapist, and I wanted to work in a field that allowed people to be their most vulnerable, most authentic self. And sex is one of those things that really kind of strips us of all our guards, and really kind of help us to be in a place of vulnerability. And oftentimes the struggle for a lot of people is where they don't want to let that vulnerability go. So then sex becomes a taboo. Sex becomes filled with traumatic experiences. It's filled with shame. It's filled with guilt. But once we're allowed to let all of those things go, then it makes it so much easier for us to be at one with ourselves and actually experience sex in a much more pleasurable way. So, I mean, for me, it was always about that. I always knew that I wanted to work in this world with people in this way.
That's so amazing because, a lot of people kind of find their way.
Right.
Like I didn't find my way into in terms of this working with sexuality until I was in my late 30s,
Right. Yeah.
early 40s, right? Late 30s.
And also I think the thing that I've seen with that is it's building that confidence up, because a lot of people I know who work in the field of sex and sexology, they come from a place of not having confidence before. And this was a way of them building their confidence up. It's like they always say to me, I wasn't always like this, Right. And I've always been like this. I've always been very liberal. I've always been very sexually open. And I've always been very comfortable with my sexuality in a way that's very different from a lot of other people I've experienced who work in this field.
And so how was that within your family? Did you grow up with parents who were very liberal, very open as well? Or were you kind of a little different? Like were they more
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a family where sexuality was very open, and we were very liberal. We were Christians, so I grew up Christian. Literally, the house I grew up in was right across the street from the church that we went to every Sunday and every Wednesday night for Bible studies. So we were very religious, but then we also knew that religion was only a small part of our lives. And we were very liberal. So we talked about sex. I would see, images of sex around, appropriate images, of course, for our age. And we would have conversations with my family. Like we would have conversations with my mom. She would tell us what sex was, how it was, how people got pregnant, and all of those things, and it made me appreciate the way I was raised, because it allowed me to see sex in a much shameful way that sometimes can happen. So I was really pleased with that, and I think it kind of shapes me into who I am now as a sex therapist.
Right. Yeah, because I never really had that, I didn't really have that.
I think we're having some bad connection.
Oh man, can you hear me? It's my computer. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I'll tell you, if it kind of like cuts out, you will still be on, so just keep talking.
Okay, so
because usually my computer, my internet sucks.
That's amazing.
So I would go out, but people would still be able to hear you and see you.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, just back up. You just keep talking. So I would love to hear from those that's on. How was it with you guys growing up? Were you able to have talk with your families? Did you grow up in liberal families and things like with a liberal family, or was it more conservative? Like mine was much, much more conservative. So, and when you were talking about, the nudity, seeing people in the nude and things like that, like, I know that a lot of people have challenges. I've put a couple of posts on Instagram and Facebooks with people nude or, talking about it. And I've had people say that they live alone and they still can't be nude in the house, themselves. And so that's a big challenge.
Absolutely. And it's unfortunate because a lot of the people I see in my practice, they have very, very limiting views of healthy sexual identity. Even just kind of looking at themselves naked is problematic. It feels bad. I think a lot of it is to do with the traditional religions that we're raised with. Particularly in Western societies, we're raised with sex being only associated with marriage, or only associated with procreation, or only associated with a traditional relationship. And even masturbation, I talked a lot about that during May. There's so much shame involved in self-touch and self-pleasure. And, it's either very gratuitous, which is very grotesque, or it's hidden. It's never anything that's seen as kind of normal and healthy. We're either exploiting our bodies in ways that are very grotesque, or we're actually hiding it away. And I think there has to be some sort of middle ground where we're able to talk about sex and experience sex in a way that is sexy and okay and and normal. So I try to normalize sex in every single area of my life. I talk about it at the dinner table, for example. I talk about it wherever I get a chance to talk about myself. Then sex is usually a part of that, or the work I do.
Right. Yeah, I talk about it a lot too. I'm just because I'm very open.
Right.
Right, obviously.
That's why we're right here with each other, having this conversation all about sex. It's great because I think even just us talking about it gives people permission in their own lives to say, actually, you know what? It's not such. Let's not have such hang-ups around it.
Right.
So yeah, I really like the idea. So tell me about for your experience, what it was like for you when you decided that sex wasn't going to be taboo anymore.
Wow, that's a great question. Yeah, I was definitely after I moved to Brazil. So I was like mid to late 30s. And honestly, it was after I started working with Tantra, because I was in a closet with it, right? My family, it was like I never talked about it. It was just me. I had my other name, Prandata Prem. My birth name is Renee. And so I started putting everything about the Prandata because I didn't want my family to know. But then eventually I was like, I'm just tired of like having to have almost like a double life. Like I just can't, And so I was like, it just came from me just being tired. And I just started talking about it. I started putting up videos of me giving tantric massage. And I remember my family like calling, like, are they naked? Are you touching them naked? And I'm like, yes. And I just started sharing. And I'm like, look, this is the work that I do. And even still recently, I've had someone in my family call and like, what are you doing? Why don't you come back and work in your field as a psychotherapist? You got a master's in psychology. People need you right now. And I'm like, people need me with sexuality,
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's all connected. And so
it's interesting that people don't see sexuality as important as they don't see it as important as any other form of, even within mental health, within the healing space, of practitioners. Kind of sexuality is is very much an undercurrent and very much, you know, kind of unimportant. You know, so even with that person calling you and saying, you know, people need you right now because of what's going on, whatever is going on with COVID and that, it's like, okay, that's very important, but so is helping someone to feel good about their sex, you know, to feel good about their relationship, feel good about their interactions, and more importantly, feel good about themselves.
And right now, that's what's needed. I think a lot of people forget about how sexuality is so intrinsic in our life because everything is connected. And honestly, if we're down sexually, if we're not, you know, we're not feeling that pleasure, if we have blockages sexually, we're going to be so depressed. We're not going to be able to deal with the stresses of COVID. So this is something more so than ever we need to deal with that. And honestly, I have more clients now in this area of tantra and sexuality than I did before COVID, because people are like, you know what, I actually have time now to work on my sexuality. You know, I haven't been able to have orgasms, or I have premature ejaculation. It's time for me to work on myself. And so, you know, people are doing work.
Someone, my realtor life, just talked about growing up Jehovah's Witnesses and what that was like. You know, I don't know if that's a male or female or someone who's gender non-conforming. But yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, religion really kind of puts a block on how we experience sex. And you know, in just kind of going back to what you said earlier, a lot of times it's not just about sexual dysfunctions. It's not just about the things that we talk about, healing, you know, premature ejaculation, pain during intercourse, vaginismus, all of that. Sometimes it's just people having unhealthy relationships with sex. So they're choosing partners that are not good for them based on sexuality. They're making decisions about their own life based on sexuality that's unhealthy. They're actually engaging in sexual behavior that's unhealthy and destructive, and you know, could be deadly, you know, in extreme cases. So you know, I think sex is so much more important than we like to admit. And it's so much a part of who we are. You know, I did some research, and you know, 99.99% of us are here because of sex. You know, it's only in the last 10 years that we've had other options outside of sexual intercourse where we can actually procreate. You know, now we have obviously lots of insemination, test tubes. You know, we don't need to have sex anymore to procreate. However, it's still, most of us are here because of that. So it's intrinsic. It runs through our veins. It runs through our psyche. It runs through our connectivity with each other. So I think avoiding it or saying, you know, it's not important, I'd rather go deal with my finances before I deal with this, or I'd rather deal with my depression before I deal with this, or I'd rather deal with A, B, C, and D. I'd rather go buy a dress or buy new shoes, or, you know, so yeah, sex is, you know, I'm so happy that we're having this conversation. I'm so happy that people are tuning in and you know, kind of, you know, sharing their comments with us about what's important to them and how they've experienced sex. So one of the questions I get asked all the time is about my own sexual experiences.
One second. Sorry.
How do you deal with that as a practitioner, as a healer? Do you talk about your own sexual experiences with clients, or is that?
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, it's going out. Yeah, so I do. Honestly, because I feel like, you know, in this work, we have to be able to, well, not have to do anything, but I feel like it's important. The more I make myself vulnerable, the more my clients can become vulnerable and open up and share to me. So with my clients, I'm very much like, we're almost like we're friends talking, but then I'm also the therapist, right? So I share things, I'm open, and it really just kind of helps them to also be able to open up and understand they're not alone, you know? And so a lot of times with me sharing, what the big thing that I found is the universe is really interesting in that it brings people that are working on similar things that you had to work through. So a lot of times when they're telling their stories, I'm like, yeah, I went through that. And I could share that. Or sometimes I might be sharing something like, yeah, that's what I'm going through now. And so even when I was just a regular psychotherapist and not even working in the sexuality field, I kept having men and women come to me with relationship issues. And then I started doing couples counseling, couples therapy, but I didn't want to do it. Like, I was like, this is not what I want to do. Like, I want to work with adolescents. Like, I love adolescents. And I worked in, my internship was at an adolescent clinic, but couples kept coming to me because I had relationship issues. And I was like, well, I felt insecure. I was like, how am I going to help them when I don't even want to be in a relationship? Like 3 months, I was out. Like, relationships weren't for me. And I had great men that came into my life, but I was like out, So I'm like, who am I to talk about relationships? Why do these things coming up? So I share these things, and I think it's important to share those things. But I want to add one more thing to my realtor life. He said he's a male, and I'm so glad you're on here. It's so interesting because I always end up having more men. NC Work is a man too. I always have more men coming on than women. So it's nice, but I work more with women than men, but men are the ones who come onto my lives and watch. It's so interesting. But
well, I think part of that is that men are usually, when it comes to sex, they're the ones who are voyeurs, and they like to be on the sideline watching. And I think for them, they're more comfortable seeing a video and hearing someone talk about it, but they're actually being in it, experiencing it themselves. So yeah, men seem to be more hands off when it comes to, kind of engaging in sex.
That's a good point. Yeah, because I do so many online workshops and things like that for both men and women, open about tantra, sexuality, and I might have 1 or 2 men in there and the rest all women. So it's so interesting. But I'm glad my realtor life is on here, and he has another question. But just real quick, I know a lot of people that has gotten married early because of the church, like we were talking about earlier on, and then eventually they're not happy because they did it because out of obligation. And I have quite a few clients, which is interesting, that are women, but they got married early because of the same reason. And now they're like, I've never had sex with anyone else. I want to explore. And, maybe I want to have other partners, or maybe I want to open up this relationship, so, and they always say, I wish I would have gotten married so early, or because this is what I was supposed to do to be a good Christian person,
Right. Or sometimes it's arranged, Sometimes he says he's right. Sometimes it's arranged, these marriages are arranged depending on what your religion is and what your culture and traditions are. You don't even get to choose when you get married. It's kind of like, this is how it's always been. And oftentimes you'll go along with those traditions, but then that rebelliousness comes out in different ways.
Right.
And sexuality is one way that you can be rebellious and still keep it private.
Exactly.
So I've seen a lot of men who I've experienced who've come in to see me, who are they've had a very repressed sexuality. They have to be this way because the expectations of their family, their friends, their social settings says this is how you have to present yourself. But they have these unmet needs that they express sexually. So it could be an unmet need to be vulnerable, for example, but as a man, that wasn't encouraged. It wasn't celebrated. It wasn't a part of how they were raised to be. So therefore, sexuality allows them to be that vulnerable. It allows them to go into a dungeon and be called a slave, be kind of, dominated by a woman, or perhaps a trans woman, or perhaps a man, where they can keep that side of themselves hidden and, locked away. It's on a Friday night, somewhere down in the dungeon. But then they can be what is expected of them every other day of the week. And I think that can be very problematic. So,
Mhm.
I encourage men all the time, think about what your needs are. Sex should be open. Sometimes it causes so much anxiety because it's hidden. It's hidden from their main partner. It's hidden from their children. It's hidden from people at work. So, and
Mhm.
that in itself can actually add to mental health
Oh
illnesses
yeah.
and mental health issues. As it keeps going on, because it's almost like they have this double life.
Mhm. And
Um,
it also causes issues. I believe that this also causes more rapes, more of these sexual delinquent behaviors, more unwanted pregnancies, even by adolescents. I think the more that we can have these conversations out in the open and normalize sexuality, the better it would be for everyone in terms of, reducing the mental health stress that we have
right.
in society, the sexual abuse.
Yeah. Yeah. And honesty. Honesty is such an elusive concept in our world today. It's almost it escapes so many of us because we find it very difficult to be honest. And I'm not saying honesty is in, where did you go last night? I'm
Right.
saying honesty where you understand who you are and you're able to actually express that openly. Who are you? What are you about? What makes you excited? You
Right.
know, what gets you to a point of no return? What gets you to that heightened sense of, kind of excitement? And can you be honest about that? Can you be real about that to the people you care about and the people who love you? Or is that a part of you that's hidden away? That you have to lie about?
Mm.
One of the things that I've worked with is, sexual acceptance and sexual diversity and also sexual separation. So, we live in this world where sexual identity is conceptualized in very limited terms. So we know people identify as gay, people identify as straight, people identify as bisexual, and there's a few other terms that are used, but the majority of our society is categorized in gay, straight, or bisexual.
Hmm.
Um, and that is so limiting for some people because
Yes.
it doesn't express the fullness of who they are and how they enjoy sexual activities. And I think what happens is people feel like they're typecast in these different roles that society have depicted, and they just what gets you heightened sexually on that? That's powerful. Okay.
Sorry
So
to
yeah, I
distract
think
you.
it's
I
I
just be
think it's
posting these
incredibly
books up.
important to recognize those things and to be open with yourself first. Be open first, and then
Oh, you cut out when you just came back on. I don't know if you paused or not, but cut out. Um, you there?
I think I did, but I saw you smiling. Something really excited you there.
Okay. But people could hear you, so that's all good. My realtor life said, well, well, let's go back. He had a question. How do you find happiness and contentment with not being in a relationship? I think that's a great question. Can you hear me? Oh, I think it's frozen. Well, I don't know if Michelle is talking or not, but I'm gonna go ahead and talk until he comes back on internet. Um,
So
yeah.
tell me, so I missed you. I missed you.
Oh, okay, you're back. Oh, good. Yeah, I was just bringing up my realtor life asked the question, how do you find happiness and contentment with not being?
I was just saying I missed what you were saying earlier as we were kind of going in and out with our connection. So I just wanted you to repeat that. I'm looking at the my realtor life.
Oh yeah, I can you hear me? Can you hear me or are we out? Can you guys hear me?
You're breaking up. I can hear you. I can hear you now.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. um, Yeah, so realtor life, he's saying there's a couple good points that he brought up. How do you maintain contentment, um find happiness and contentment not being in a relationship? And I think Zacchaeus kind of answering that, loving yourself. Signal issues, that's okay, show grace. Thanks, love. So she's saying loving on yourself. I'm not sure if you're hearing me or not, so I'm just gonna keep
I
talking.
know I'm here. I'm hearing you, and I think loving yourself is very easy to say, but it's not so easy for everyone to accomplish.
Oh, okay. So he's saying, my real to life say you're freezing, Michelle. So maybe it might be your computer, your
But
internet instead of mine. Normally it's mine, but if you're freezing, that means it's yours, because it's usually me freezing. But
oh,
that's true.
okay,
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
it could be. I mean, I have all my bars, so I'm not sure.
Okay. But it's going, it's going. Let's we'll see. The
I
people are
guess we'll
getting
just we'll just
here.
have a stop start.
Yeah, so you're saying that loving on yourself is not so easy. I think that for me, like just really living in my truth, and I know it's difficult. The church makes it so difficult when, like what you were saying, Michelle, the church makes it difficult and they say you have to be straight. It's a sin if you're gay, but sexuality is on a continuum. And I personally don't believe that everybody is straight or gay. Like this whole
Right,
continuum, and where most of us are somewhere in between that, and so and this is part of why I left religion. And I'm not saying for anyone to do that. Everyone has to choose and do what's best for them. But I was going to Bible study, I was doing all of these different things, and and I have friends, I'm very much open. I'm like, whatever. I'm not 100% monogamous. And I was like, I would hear things and I would question my pastor, and he didn't have answers, or he would look at me like I'm being disrespectful or something. And I'm like, I can't.
right,
Like, for me, I feel like I'm being a good Christian. I'm coming 5 days a week. I'm in the drama ministry. I'm in a dance ministry. I'm coming to Bible study. I feel like if I have questions, they should be able to be answered. And
right,
like, not like I'm doing something wrong because I have doubt. And so for me, I had to find what made sense for me. And in my journey, I went to Buddhism, because they didn't have, for me, I felt like there wasn't this, you're going to hell if you do this. And I feel like
right,
if we
right,
have a loving God, how can he condemn us and send us to hell? And
right,
more and more now, I'm like, sex, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, how can sex be wrong? We came from it. And, if we come from this patriarchal society that's about dominating and controlling. And, and so that domination and control is putting down anything that's not the majority, not white
right,
male, patriarchal. So if you're gay, if you're lesbian, if you're, if you're a woman, if you're black, like there's things, I mean, they can quote things in the Bible that says it's okay to be a master and beat your, beat your slave or whatever. So it's like,
right, exactly. I mean,
so
I think we become slave to our societal norms, and I think it really takes us to tap into our inner ability to grow through what we've already learned. Grow through what we've experienced as children, as young adults, to be able to see exactly what.
mm. Oh, internet froze again. I hope you guys can hear him talking, because Michelle is saying something great. Okay, so I'm not sure if it paused or not, or if you guys are not hearing him. So I'm just going to keep talking. This is so sad. So, okay, so, all right, so then I'll keep talking because I think he paused. So, yeah, so Zacchaeus says, yes, the church makes so many things difficult. It complicates it, and it's about, like I was saying, it's about control and domination, and so we have to, yeah, he's frozen. He just cut off. So I'm going to wait for him to get back on. So we have to live in our truth, whether we're gay, we're lesbian, whatever it is, whether we want to be polygamous or not, we need to live in our truth and say, this is a type of lifestyle that I want for me. This is what makes me happy. And so, I started exploring. And again, like this is more recently, I'm 45, about to be 46 next week. I recently started exploring BDSM, polyamory. It wasn't until a few years ago that I got into polyamorous relationship. And my partner at the time, my first partner, he was bisexual. And he was like, when we entered into a relationship, he said, I'm bi, and there's times when I want to be with masculine energy and other times that I want to be with feminine energy. And the fact that he was able to be man enough to be honest and open and talk to me about who he is, I accepted him. And I loved that. And I was like, I love the fact that he gave me the option. He gave me the option to be able to say, yes, I'm cool with this. Yes, that's fine. Where some people, they wouldn't be able to do that. And it's not their fault. It's not their fault. It's the fault of society. It's the fault of the church that makes us feel like we're less than, that we're not a man if we're gay. And that's why I said, I felt like he was man enough, because he was able to open up. He found that strength regardless of what society was saying to him. And he's like, this is who I am. And so I accepted that. And I was like, yes, I love that. And I was okay with it. I'm like, okay, cool. When you need your energy to be with a man, that's fine, and it's good because I like being, in open relationships. So I was able to see other people too when I felt like I needed other energy or I wanted to be with someone else. And if I didn't feel like I wanted to be with someone else, I was fine with just being with him, So I think that's what's really important. And so honestly, it's like forget what society forget what society says, forget what they try to dictate for our lives, because at the end of the day, only you live with yourself. I can only live with myself. So it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks, what anyone else says, because at the end of the day, they're doing their thing and they're going to be okay with their decisions, and whatever choices they try to inflict on us doesn't affect them. So, hell, welcome back.
Hey. Yeah, but I guess the signal was bad in Brazil and in Atlanta.
Yeah. Me dropping off.
Right.
So I didn't expect that. So Zakia says, bi men deserve love, bi women love women too. LOL.
I think everyone deserves love, and I think sexuality doesn't need to be defined in these confined labels that we have. I understand how we work as humans, and we need to be able to identify things in order to know whether it's something we can navigate through or how to navigate through them. So labels are important. I won't say they're not, but they shouldn't be the only thing we use to define people's sexuality or our own sexuality, because that can lead us to be very constrictive. So I think and that's one of the things I love about the podcast, because on my podcast I talk about so many different forms of sexual, not just sexual identity, but sexual expression. And sometimes the way we express sex we're not necessarily able to put those in the boxes of the identity that society says we should have. So I think it's so important to be able to express our sexuality in a way that doesn't constrict us, that doesn't leave us feeling bad or wrong or inadequate or unfulfilled. But, sex should be pleasurable. Sex should be exciting. Sex should be exactly what makes you feel good. As long as it's consensual, as long as it's agreed upon, as long as it is not harmful to you or anyone else, then go for it. You know?
I agree. So I'm going to share this. We got to share your podcast. This is one of the, I just put the link on here. This is one of his episodes that I watched yesterday.
Perfect. And
So,
you finally listened to it, huh?
Yes.
You had a little confession yesterday, which was nice. I'm happy you did. Confessions good for the soul.
Well, it was funny because yesterday I was doing a talk on BDSM, and so I was like, let me go to his podcast because I never went to it, and I was like, oh, he has something on BDSM. Let me check it out, and it was really good. So it does definitely lead you down that rabbit hole when you want to listen to all of them.
Right.
So guys, out his podcast. It was really good. Let's see. The title is "Let's Come Together with the Sex Doc."
Yeah.
So,
and that's basically just talking about coming. Like, so many people I meet just don't have great experiences of ejaculation or orgasm, and I'm like, we should all be having it, all of us. We should be having it multiple times. So that's kind of that's where the name came from. So let's come together. Like, we should all come together as humans, but also come together as in having an orgasm, and making sure that orgasm is the best you've had. And some people are afraid of that. They're afraid of what that would feel like.
So that's interesting you say that, because it's, for some women, it's also about needing to maintain control. So a lot of times when I'm giving tantric massage for women, they've never had orgasms. They're very much in control. They have to be in control. When they're right about to get in that peak and have this great big orgasm, they're like, stop, I can't. And it's like, allow yourself to let go of control, surrender, trust in your body, trust that you deserve to have this pleasure.
Right.
So
being deserving, and then also giving yourself permission to do it. A lot of times men and women do not give themselves permission to let go. It's scary. It's an unknown feeling that nobody wants to take the chance with. And it's almost like, they have sex and they enjoy the interaction they have from the sex, but they're missing out on that heightened sense of excitement that I always talk about in my tantra sessions. It's like, okay, you've ejaculated before, you've had an orgasm before, but you've not had one like this.
Yeah.
It's never felt like this before, because in this space you're letting go of every single piece of anchor that you have that's held you back, that's held you down. You still do it with the A. I think it might just be your I think it might just be your spell check that does that.
It might be. What? Oh no, I think I put an A. I think I did that.
You think you did that on purpose?
I did it. I think I'm being a little. I'm blaming it on the full moon.
Right. Everything's on the full moon today. That seems very Brazilian, the way you said that.
I think that's what it is. I think I'm doing. I think
you're doing it in a very Brazilian way, but
yeah,
they'll still find me. A quick Google search will get them right.
Yes. So we're not ending yet, but I just want to put it out there. You guys can reach Machel on Instagram at relationship and sex doc, on Facebook, Therapy for You. I'm just enjoying this conversation and his podcast at Let's Come Together with the Sex Doc. So we're still here. We still have a little bit of time. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and ask your questions. If you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel yet, be sure to subscribe.
Best channel ever.
Thank you. And don't forget to hit that like. And if you're getting something from this, share this. If you're on Facebook, Instagram, share this with your friends. Because again, this is really about, releasing the taboos and making these conversations okay. Hello, Tony. Hi.
Hey,
So,
Tony.
let me ask you. So, I had a question came up for me as you were talking.
Mhm.
Because like doing this work, I get so much satisfaction in terms of seeing the pleasure on people's faces
Mhm.
when they can, have pleasure, when they can let go, when they can orgasm.
Can I
What?
just add something to that before you finish your question? Because I just can't let this go. So
Yeah.
you see pleasures on people's faces. I see pleasure all over their body. I see
Right.
pleasure in their face, on their penis, on their nipples, on their vagina, on their clitoris, on their toes. I see pleasure all over it. For me, that's the most exciting. But I want you to continue with your question.
No, actually, you just answered it now. 'Cause that's what I was going to ask you. I was, you, you just answered my question before you.
Actually, see, we're in sync. That's what it
We
is. I
are.
already knew what you were going to ask. So I thought, let me.
It was so funny because I was literally going to say that gives me pleasure. Like what does it for you? So thank you.
So I can expand on that. So I see pleasure in their whole body. I see that changing. It's not just their face or their eyes. But what gives me pleasure isn't just seeing it.
Mhm.
It's knowing that now they have an experience that they can take moving forward. Now they've experienced something that
Hold on,
they
hold on.
haven't.
I think you're giving pleasure right now on Tony. So too bad we can't see her whole body and face.
Hey Tony, how are you? So yeah, I take pleasure in knowing that that individual, that couple, or that throuple, or that group leaves having an experience that they didn't have before. And sometimes for my clients, they're in their 50s, they're in their 60s. They've
Mhm.
gone their whole life not experiencing, sex in a way that is pleasurable for them. So for them to be able to experience sex in a way that excites them and takes them to a level that they haven't experienced before, that to me is what really makes this. Um, you're just as bad.
Standing green.
But thank you, Tony. Thank you for your compliment. That's very, very sweet. But yeah, I think that's what does it for me every time. It's just knowing that they have a new experience that they're going to take with them, in whether into their new relationship, their new path in life, their new found happiness. So that's really it. So a question I get asked all the time is, how do you deal with obviously in psychotherapy, we know there's transference that happens in the
Mhm.
clinical space. So I get asked a lot, and I've answered it many times, but I'm just curious to hear what your answer is. How do you deal with the sexual transference that happens when you're doing tantra? How do you deal with that sexual connection? Whether you're physically or sexually attracted to that person, there's still a connection. How do
Mhm.
you deal with it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, it's interesting because I lived in a Tantra commune. So we did a lot of work, like literally a lot of work in the nude, a lot of active meditations so that, and like just different experiences where in the commune with each other, we would be blindfolded. This is an example, right? We would be blindfolded, smelling each other. Everybody's naked, touching, and just kind of a way to kind of help us not feel like, okay, I have this urge. I see this and I want to jump on him and have sex right away or jump on her, right? So I think that it was kind of like a conditioning that we went through when I lived in the Tantra commune to help us not necessarily have to act on something, if that makes sense. So that's one of the things that's helped me. And I also, there's so many people that have, um, taken advantage of people in these situations. There's many gurus who have sexually abused clients. So
Oh,
I'm very
absolutely.
serious about this. Even though someone is coming to me asking, like they might ask for tantric massage, I still ask for consent when I'm doing it. Is it okay for me to touch you here, there? If I have any interest, um, I shut it off. I just shut it off. But
Right.
I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing that if you do have it, because I think that energy that you're feeling, it actually does help that person. So I
Right.
help to heal them even more. So I'll allow that energy. When I say shut it off, I mean shut it off in the sense where I wouldn't act on it.
Yeah.
I'm still very appropriate, but I realize that energy is still very good for this healing space.
Right.
So,
And
what
also
do you say? Now I'm interested in hearing.
you know, I'm happy you answered it the way you did. I didn't have the experience you have of living in a tantra commune, but that sounds amazing. I would like that. But for me, as a psychologist, I've really kind of trained in all my studies. I've trained on how to separate what is work from what is my personal life. And I think that's very helpful. And it's a healthy way to be. So I'm not taking on my clients' work in a way that's going to impede on my own self wellness. So it's the same thing in Tantra. It's as a client, I'm there to help you. And there's tools that I need to help you. One of those tools is my sexuality. It's my heightened sense of awareness around sensuality. It's my sense of peace and calm. And, you know, that is what I need to help you. So I have that. But what I don't need to help you is to be engaged with you on a sexual level.
Right.
For my pleasure.
Well, yeah, for your pleasure, exactly.
For my pleasure.
Because there's the thing of healing with tantric sex, and there, I don't do that. I haven't been taught that in terms of to work with that as a sex therapist. But I know that there are people who do tantric sex to heal people. So actually, let me ask you: do you use that as a form of healing? With your clients if they need it?
So sex to me is very broad. Sex isn't so. I think what you've just described as sexual. I think what you've described as sexual intercourse. I don't have sexual intercourse with my clients. However, there is an element of sexual encounter that happens. It could be touched. It could be smell. It could be use of you know, kind of toys or kind of instruments that will help to stimulate different parts of their erogenous zones and kind of heighten their sensitivity. So yes, there is that element, but there is no intercourse, because I think for a lot of us, our only definition of sex is intercourse. And when I teach my clients, or when I engage or coach my clients, I want them to have a broad sense of self. I want them to have a broad sense of what sex is. And to limit that sexual pleasure to intercourse, I think, is doing them a disservice. So I always tell them to come in with an open mind. Yes, you've always known sex to be intercourse, but in this space, sex is way more than intercourse. Whether it's penetration using a penis, penetration using a dildo, penetration using a vibrator, it is very different. So that's how I answer when then that questions get asked. You know, it's I also have to deal with the fact that a lot of my clients do find me attractive. You know, and that's oftentimes,
or sex, as Tony said here.
So, I mean, you know, I've had potential clients who said, "There's no way I could see you. Like, I'm too attracted to you. There's no way." But for me, I use that as an advantage in my therapy sessions, because if you have a pattern of behavior where you've exercised your sexuality every time you see someone that you're attracted to, and you haven't really been able to stop that pattern of behavior, this is a great learning space for you. So now that you're with me, and you can't actually exercise that, then I use that to retrain your mind and retrain your behaviors. So it's always worked in my favor for that.
Yes. So let me ask you, I just want to get onto the BDSM a little bit. So
Go on. We have a few more minutes. Let's use it.
a few more minutes. Do you consider yourself a dom?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
So I could tell.
What gave it away?
It's so funny because I love how you kind of started taking control and you started interviewing me. And I'm like, he's such a dom. He's like interviewing me on my show that I'm supposed to be interviewing him.
Right. Well,
it's cool.
I've never been submissive.
I see.
It doesn't work for me.
But lucky for you, I'm actually more of a switch. I'm like 90% switch. So I'm
I love that. Well, see, like I said, we're just vibing right now. I got that said. So it gave me the permission I needed to actually, intervene.
Yes. So oh, Tony, I didn't know this about you. I consider myself a switch, dom and sub, depending on who and where.
Okay, Tony, I like that.
I like that too.
See, you're learning about your guests every day.
Yes. I love this. So, and thank you guys again for coming on and commenting. And I brought that up to say, because I did watch his podcast. I did listen to his podcast on BDSM. But I brought that up to say, I like that because when you're vibing and something is flowing, it flows well. And I think this is a good example. Even though I'm a switch, but I consider myself a dom, and I'm very much a dom. And I have some friends who are doms, and when they come at it with like very aggressive, kind of like it, I like automatically. Hit back. Like I'm like, no, I'm the dom. Like, so and it's not that it's conscious because it's not even that we even talk about it, but I can feel it where that they're trying to take control, but the way that they do it, it pushes me. But when you're like, I think like the way you do it is flowing and it's nice. Like yesterday on a talk, there was another guy on there who was dom. And he easily put me into that sub role where I just was like, ooh, I'm like, I love hearing from him talk. And yes, so, Karina's asking for a link to your podcast.
I can post it.
Yeah. Well,
it's on my Instagram. If Karina, I love that name, by the way.
Yes. So Karina, you can go to his Instagram right here.
And it's right at the top.
Yes, and I spelled your name correctly.
You did, yeah. I'm loving this. Thank you.
So at relationship.sexdoc, it's in his bio. So if you click on the bio, it takes you right to his podcast, and it's great. But I like this, and I think this is a great example of relationships in general. Like, because I know people who are like maybe two doms in a relationship or two subs in a relationship, and it's hard for them. But I think that if you kind of just allow yourself to be and you just, I don't know what I'm trying to say right now. I think if you're going with the flow, things can kind of work. Like, I think I know what I'm trying to say. It's how you express yourself. It's how you speak. And I think that makes a difference. And I think sometimes within a relationship, sometimes people might want to feel like that need to be in control. So the way that you do it is more aggressive, and as opposed to allowing that your partner to open up and be vulnerable, they close up.
Right.
So this has been a great example how this has been flowing and going, even though we both have dominant personalities. It's flowing,
No, I think you're absolutely right. And in relationships, what I find is you mentioned about control, and I think this idea of control can be good and it can be very, very bad.
Yeah.
This conversation has now left me in the dust. My real life, just reach out to me. I'll get you right. Don't you worry. Yeah. Send me a DM.
He did.
I think there is a sense that everyone wants to be in control of something. Mm-hmm. Even people who may seem out of control. The fact that they seem out of control is a way of them controlling something else that's kind of not working for them. So I think, being able to kind of express what exactly it is that you're trying to control, because you may not be trying to control that person, but it comes across that way, and then that makes the other person defensive. So if you're able to express yourself and say, actually, this is what I need, and this is how I feel when you say that, then it kind of eases everyone, it relaxes people, and you're able to communicate in a much more healthy way. So I appreciate you very much.
Yes. So let me ask you, if you could give one tip to people who are watching about anything, sexuality, tantra related, relationship related, what would you say? What can people take away?
The one takeaway I'd like everyone who's listening is to be honest. Be honest with who you are to yourself.
It sounds really bad. You sound really choppy.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I would say is just be honest and be open with yourself about who you are and what you're about. I think nothing is right until you're able to be honest with yourself. It doesn't matter how compatible you are with someone, how much you love them, how much they love you. You have to be able to express who you are to yourself. And then, you can work from there. So that's my takeaway.
Okay, awesome. So Karina says, I am mostly sub, but my dom has certainly come with certain partners who I felt really comfortable and safe with. I think it's fun to play, to go back and forth. Thank you for sharing that. Tony, also what's super beautiful is how much control the sub has as well, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exercising a lot of control, but the men, a sub is like insert safe word, everything is paused. Cool. Love that. Be honest and open with yourself. Big facts. Yes. So thank you so much, Machel, for being on.
You're so welcome. We have to do this again. This was absolutely fantastic.
Yes, I think we need to do this on BDSM because.
Let's do it. I definitely want to do that again. But thank you so much to all your listeners and all your viewers. I had an amazing time with you. And please just continue being fabulous, continue being beautiful, and I will see you soon.
See you soon. Thank you. Go ahead. I'm just going to close off. Just don't forget, if you got to go off, you can. Don't forget to add him at a relationship sex doc, and don't forget to hit subscribe to my channel. Share this if you got something out of it, because other people will. And join me as well on Instagram, _Tantra, or on Twitter or Facebook at Renee Adolph, ADOLPHD. On my website, check out my website, www.comeoutofhim.com. Thank you guys for coming on. This was amazing. It was so good. Thank you for your comments and everything. I had a great time. You guys have a wonderful night. Thank you, my realtor life. This was really good. It was good to have you guys sharing and your feedback. As for subscribe, thank you for subscribing. I can't say it. Thank you for subscribing. You guys have a wonderful night. Bye.